They didn't call her names. They didn't push her in the halls. But the silence that followed Jada Monroe through Brookhill Springs High was louder than any shove. New girl, black girl, braid too long, eyes too calm. They watched her like she was a spark about to catch. She didn't flinch. Not yet. But what they didn't know was that the quietest ones don't come to break. They come to reset the rules. And Jada? She wasn't here to be liked. She was here to be remembered. On her first day at Brookhill Springs High, no one touched Jada. But everyone watched her like they expected her to break. The hallway smelled like floor polish and overripe apples from a forgotten lunchbox. Jada walked with her head held still, her feet quiet against the tile, her steps calculated, not cautious, just controlled. She passed clusters of students who hushed mid-sentence, then resumed in tones just loud enough. No one spoke to her. But their glances brushed her like cold wind. Her mother's voice rang faintly in her head. Just keep your head down and it'll pass. But Jada had learned long ago. Some things don't pass until you face them. The halls opened into a cafeteria, decked with limp orange streamers and a half-deflated ghost balloon tangled in the ceiling vent. The smell of reheated meatloaf clung to the walls. Jada scanned the tables. Laughter rose from the far end. Boys in varsity jackets, legs sprawled like territory flags. She spotted an open chair near the corner. Before she reached it, Kyle, a tall boy with gelled hair and eyes like he always knew something you didn't, slid into it with a smirk that didn't need words. He didn't look at her. That was the point. Jada didn't flinch. She turned, walked to the far edge of the cafeteria, and sat alone. She pulled out a small notebook and started sketching something in the corner, her hand moving fast, like she was chasing a thought. Across the room, a girl with thick glasses and braces, Lucia, glanced at her, then away, then back again. Homeroom smelled of dry erase marker and overused perfume. The teacher smiled too brightly when Jada entered. "Welcome to Brookhill Springs, sweetie," she chirped, her voice dripping with that forced, sugary tone reserved for new students and slow children. Jada nodded once and took a seat by the window. She didn't bother unpacking her bag. At lunch, she chose the corner table again. No one joined. No one tried. Principal Holt passed through the cafeteria slowly, nodding here and there, but his gaze paused on Jada. She wasn't doing anything, just staring out the window, her hands folded. But something about her silence seemed intentional, heavy. He saw a younger version of himself in that posture. Quiet didn't mean passive. Sometimes it meant preparation. The janitor, a thin man with a stoop and soft shoes, pushed his mop nearby and gave Jada a slight nod as he passed. She returned it. He didn't say anything. Neither did she. After lunch came Jim. The locker room buzzed with talk. Who was dating who? Complaints about math class. Jada tied her shoes, then turned to the mirror and reached for the end of her braid. She ran her fingers down the length slowly, tightening it just a little more. Each knot pulled her thoughts into focus. It was her armor. Her braid didn't just keep her hair out of her face. It reminded her who she was. Coach Dalton barked orders. Students paired off lazily. Jada moved with a grace too fluid for someone uninterested. Her balance, her pivot, the quiet way her body anticipated movement. It wasn't gym class to her. It was muscle memory from years of practice. She didn't advertise it. But it showed. During a water break, Brandon leaned toward Kyle and muttered, not bothering to whisper, "They always send the quiet ones from the jungle first." Kyle chuckled, sipping from his water bottle. Jada heard. Her pencil paused briefly over her notebook. Then she kept writing, her face unreadable. Later that afternoon, in an office tucked behind the administrative wing, Principal Holt sat alone. The room was dim, papers stacked in neat rows. He reached for a manila file near the corner of his desk. Its label read, "Incident Reports, Closed." His fingers hovered over the flap. He didn't open it. Not yet. The sound of scissors slicing hair is soft. But in room 214 that Wednesday, it split the air like thunder. The sky outside sagged with clouds, dull and heavy, as if the day had forgotten how to shine. Room 214 smelled like glue sticks and acrylics, the scent clinging to peeling posters of Picasso quotes and motivational slogans about creativity and respect. One, hanging crooked near the windows, read, "Respect through honor." Its edges curled like they were trying to retreat from the words. Jada sat near the back, her sketch pad angled just enough to shield her drawing. Her pencil moved with deliberate strokes, shaping the outline of a crouched lioness, tense, focused, waiting. Around her, the class drifted through creative hour, which mostly meant scrolling on phones or chatting in clumps. Ms. Henley stood at the front, flipping through a supply catalog with the sort of intensity reserved for people who'd given up actually teaching. Her eyes flicked up every so often, but never landed long enough to matter. Brandon leaned against a storage cabinet near the back. Kyle nudged him, whispering something with a grin that curled at the edges like burnt paper. Austin, perched a few desks over, watched the exchange without much interest, but his eyes followed as the two drifted toward Jada. Jada felt them before she saw them. Not footsteps. Energy. Movement that didn't belong. She kept sketching, the lioness now staring out of the page mid-prowl. Kyle snickered. Brandon raised the scissors. The plastic handle dulled with use. The room was too loud with whispers to catch the small snip. But the moment the braid dropped, the silence that followed was suffocating. Jada didn't scream. She didn't even gasp. She stood slowly, brushing the chair back with the back of her calves. Her hand reached for the braid on the floor, still bound at the end, as if it hadn't realized it was no longer part of her. She held it up, examined it like a found artifact, then looked, not at Brandon, but through him. Brandon opened his mouth, maybe for a joke, maybe for an apology. He never got the chance. Jada stepped forward, fast and soundless. One motion, clean and rehearsed. Her fist met Brandon's chest, not his face, and dropped him to his knees like his legs had been erased. Kyle stepped in, uncertain, and she twisted his arm behind him with such ease it looked like a dance. The crack wasn't loud, but it was enough. Austin half rose from his chair but froze. No one else moved. Jada didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply walked to the door, braid in hand, her breath even, her face blank. A ripped corner of the Respect Through Honor poster fluttered down beside her as she passed. The hallway felt cooler, quieter. Her shoes tapped softly against the linoleum. Behind her, room 214 remained frozen. Miss Henley stood near the window, her mouth slightly open, her hands trembling just enough to make her drop the catalog. Principal Holt sat in his office later, rewinding the security footage. Play, pause, frame forward. Jada picking up the braid. He leaned back, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Outside room 214, Jada stood waiting in the hallway. Calm, not running. "You're not being expelled," Principal Holt said. "You're being underestimated." The fog hadn't lifted yet. It crawled low across the empty parking lot, clinging to the curbs and chain-link fences like it was waiting for someone to give it permission to rise. Inside Holt's office, the heater ticked softly, pushing stale warmth into the corners. The light above flickered once, then held steady. Jada sat in the chair across from his desk, her braid coiled like a rope across her lap. Her knuckles rested on top of it, pale from pressure, but steady. Principal Holt didn't look at her at first. He was staring at the paused security footage on his computer monitor, fingers laced beneath his chin. The screen showed a blurred still of room 214, mid-chaos, Brandon frozen mid-fall, Kyle's limbs tangled, Ms. Henley turned away. Only Jada looked fully composed, holding her braid like she'd picked up something sacred. He hit pause, stood, and moved to the file cabinet behind him. The drawer screeched quietly as it opened. He pulled a folder marked "Incident Reports," closed. The papers inside were brittle at the corners, old ink, familiar names. "I'm supposed to call this an incident," Holt said finally, voice calm. "But I won't." Jada didn't speak. She watched his hands, not his eyes. "I also won't expel you," he added. "But you'll be suspended. 3 days. That's the compromise they'll accept." She blinked once. No reaction. He reached into the bottom drawer and pulled out a slim, dark blue notebook. Unmarked. Clean. "Start writing," he said, sliding it across the desk. "Not just what happened. Everything. What you hear, what you see. Dates, names, patterns." She looked at it, then at him. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. But just for a second. Holt leaned forward. Make it undeniable. At home the night before, her mom had barely looked up from the TV when she saw Jada's face. "No cops, right?" she asked. "No," Jada replied. Her mom grunted, "Just don't bring that energy back here." Then she reached for the remote. Now, inside the quiet of Holt's office, Jada took the notebook. Her fingers brushed the cover, then opened it to the first page. Blank lines waited. "You think I'm a problem?" she asked. "I think you're a mirror," Holt replied. "Some people don't like what they see in it." He sat down again, back creaking against the leather of his chair. Jada stood. As she turned toward the door, he added, "They'll try again. Different ways. Don't give them an easy pattern." She didn't answer, but as she stepped out into the hallway, her eyes scanned the ceiling. The corners. The blind spots. She passed the patch of tile just beneath camera 2A, where the footage always glitched for 3 seconds. Then another hallway, where sunlight tried to push through the fogged windows. She opened the notebook. Back in the admin building, behind a locked faculty portal, an unseen hand hovered over an email chain titled, "Faculty Concerns, Behavior Escalation." One click. Deleted. When the news broke, the headline didn't read "Fight at Brook Hill High." It read, "State Karate Champion Attacked in Classroom." And that changed everything. The wind had picked up that Monday morning. Leaves skittered across the pavement like whispers too fast to catch. Inside the cramped newsroom of the Brook Hill Springs Sentinel, Simone Fields held a paper in one hand and Jada Monroe's suspension file in the other. Her thumb hovered over a line scribbled faintly in the margin. 7 digits, no context. At first, it looked like a mistake. Then Simone typed the numbers into the state athletic database. Her chair rolled back with a quiet groan. National. Not just state. National Karate Champion. Under 18. Ranked. The article she'd been drafting just took a sharp left turn. Later that morning, Jada sat in her room, facing the muted TV. The metal, gold, worn at the edges, rested on her nightstand next to the folded braid. She never wore it at home. It felt wrong here, too loud. The silence was what she knew. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She ignored it. Principal Holt had called Simone the night before. They hadn't spoken in decades. Not since she'd marched out of his office in '89 with a suspension slip in one hand and a bruised cheek on the other. Her photo had been in the very paper she now worked for, though back then the headline had read, "Disruptive Girl Removed After Incident." When Simone walked into Holt's office again, she didn't smile, but he had a copy of that same article waiting. "You still remember?" she asked. "I never forgot," he replied. Now, at his urging, she was trying again, this time for a different girl. Jada agreed to the interview 2 days later. No tears, no dramatics, just truth. The camera captured her seated in the corner of the Sentinel studio, a black hoodie pulled low, her face calm, unreadable. Simone asked questions that cut like scalpels, precise, intentional. "What happened in room 214? "They cut my braid." "What did you do?" "I stopped them." "And what happened next?" "I walked out." No elaboration, no anger, just fact. Simone hesitated. Then she pulled a second paper from her folder. "This is your competition registration, isn't it?" Jada's eyes flickered. "You said you'd keep it about the school." "I said I'd tell the truth." The segment aired that night. At first, it played like any local interest piece. But when Simone closed the story with a soft, steady voice, what the district didn't mention was that Jada Monroe is the reigning state karate champion. The shift was seismic. Online comments exploded. Parents called the school board. Alumni tagged former teachers. Even those who didn't know Jada shared the clip, the caption beneath her face stark. "She didn't fight, she defended. And she didn't start it." By Tuesday afternoon, the school issued a statement. By Wednesday morning, a district-wide memo confirmed that a third-party investigation would begin. Students at Brook Hill whispered her name like it was some legend reborn. "She took them both out in 2 moves, someone muttered. "I heard she trained with the Olympics." "Brandon hasn't come back to school." In the teacher's lounge, silence was heavy. Even Miss Henley avoided eye contact. That night, Jada sat on her bed, notebook open, pen moving slowly. Her medal still hadn't left the nightstand. Across town, in a glass-walled office, the district superintendent paused the interview replay. The screen froze on Jada's face. Calm, composed, unshaken. He muttered under his breath, "We need to contain this." The louder they whispered, the quieter Jada became, and the more dangerous her silence felt. By mid-November, Brook Hill Springs High had changed in ways too quiet for morning announcements. The hallways still held their breath around her, but the tone was different. Less mockery, more caution. The murals for Thanksgiving were brighter than they'd been in years, as if the janitors had been told to scrub not just the scuff marks, but the memory of something deeper. Jada walked past them like she didn't see it. But she did. She saw everything now. In the cafeteria, the usual pecking order had fractured. The table where Brandon used to sit stayed half empty. No one stopped Jada from sitting where she chose. No one offered an invitation either. That was fine. Lucia slid her tray next to Jada's. She didn't speak at first, just pulled out a pencil and began to sketch in the margins of her notebook. Jada glanced once. A profile. Hers, strong jawline, thick braid redrawn from memory. Beneath it, one word, strength. At first, Jada said nothing. Then she nodded once. In art class, Ms. Henley was on leave. The substitute, Ms. Tran, took attendance with calm efficiency and didn't smile when she didn't mean it. She glanced at Jada's untouched paper and said, "You can submit a written piece instead." It wasn't about rules. It was about knowing when to bend them. That afternoon, during passing period, a 7th grader stumbled out of a locker row, red-faced, her backpack open and dumped. Jada saw it from down the hall. She didn't run. She didn't raise her voice. She stood by the nearest camera and called out, clear and even, "This angle's good. It catches faces." The hallway froze. 2 upperclassmen scattered. The girl blinked up at Jada, confused but grateful. Jada just helped her pick up the books and walked away. Later, Zane, the boy who used to laugh at Brandon's jokes but never made his own, dropped a note on Jada's desk during homeroom. Folded twice, written in jagged block letters. "I should have stopped it. I'm sorry." She didn't unfold it in class, but she kept it. That evening, Principal Holt stayed long after the building had emptied. In a room meant for PTA meetings, he sat with Ms. Tran and 2 other teachers who hadn't spoken much before. One was Coach Reynolds, retired Marine, quiet type. The other, Mrs. Dell from the library, who had stopped shelving to kill a mockingbird after last semester's protests. "We're the committee now," Holt said simply. "Let's act like it." Ms. Tran leaned forward. "This is bigger than just one student." "I know," Holt said, but one student made it undeniable. Meanwhile, the anonymous reporting system, once ignored, had started buzzing. Notes typed in hidden corners of Chrome tabs. Screenshots. Rumors that weren't just rumors anymore. They had names. Dates. Patterns. When the student forum came, no one expected Jada to speak. But she did. She stood in front of the gym bleachers, where a dozen students and 4 teachers sat, arms crossed, waiting for something theatrical. She gave them facts. No accusations. Just rhythms. Every report is a one-time thing, until you line them up. Then they're a pattern. No names. Just sequences. She quoted from her notebook. Class times. Names of books skipped. Teachers' comments with edges too sharp to ignore. When she finished, no one clapped. But no one looked away. That night, Holt sat alone in his office, the fluorescent light above humming low. His email pinged. From anonymous@studentvoice.org. Subject: lounge audio, staff comments. He clicked play. A scratchy recording played. A voice he recognized, male, tired, and bitter, mocking Jada's silence. Another voice, female, laughed. Then the male again. "Watch. They'll name the gym after her next. Little ninja girl didn't even cry." Holt closed the laptop slowly. His jaw set tight. He didn't write anything down. But he didn't need to. On her final day before winter break, Jada sat in the exact chair they once wouldn't let her have, this time by invitation. The air had shifted at Brookhill Springs High, not with any great announcement or fanfare, but in the silence between bells, in the way students moved in the hallways, slightly less sharp, slightly more aware. The winter sun spilled through the cafeteria's main windows, soft and cold, illuminating the table at the center of the room. Jada sat there now, same posture, same guarded stillness. But this time, it wasn't defiance. It was presence. That first week, she had lingered in corners, in shadows no one owned. Now she claimed space with nothing but breath and stillness. Across from her, Lucia sat nervously, tray untouched. Jada nodded once, gently. An invitation. No speech required. In her locker, between worn textbooks and a half-empty water bottle, sat a memory box. Inside, her severed braid lay coiled like a question answered. Next to it, her old training gloves, palms worn from years of kata in quiet dojos. She hadn't needed them lately, but she never forgot them either. That morning, an envelope had arrived in the office, hand-delivered from the district superintendent. Inside was a formal letter of apology. It included phrases like regretful oversight, systemic review, and unfortunate escalation. It was signed in ink. But not in conscience. Jada didn't frame it. She folded it once and slid it under her notebook. In the gymnasium, a student assembly was held. Principal Holt stood at the podium. He didn't read from notes. "These changes are not because of one student," he said, voice steady. "They are because of too many before her, too many ignored, overlooked, dismissed. She just made it impossible to ignore." Some students clapped. Others didn't. Jada didn't look for either. Simone Fields returned that afternoon with a camera crew trailing behind her. This time, she didn't bring questions. She just asked for a quote. Jada declined. Simone smiled. "Sometimes the win is in the witness," she said, then walked away. Later, in his office, Principal Holt slid a plain envelope across his desk to Jada. "They're asking for students who lead quietly," he said. Jada took it without a word. She returned to the cafeteria, dropped the envelope into her backpack, and opened her notebook to a fresh page. The sun had shifted, warming the back of her neck. Snow had begun to fall outside. Light, unannounced, the first of the season. She wrote the first line of her scholarship essay. "They tried to cut what they couldn't understand. But I've always grown back stronger." She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. In the silence that followed her, systems shifted, and shadows shrank. Justice didn't arrive with a fist. It came with a gaze that refused to look away. Sometimes, power doesn't wear medals or speak in microphones. Sometimes, it sits at the lunch table and listens. If this story stirred something in you, consider sharing it with someone who's still sitting in the corner chair, waiting to be seen.